The story begins with a boy, Itsuki Fukunaga, a 27-year-old who left his job to pursue his dreams and returned to his hometown 2 years ago. Now managing a reptile shop, he cares for reptiles that are adaptable to temperature and humidity, with friendly personalities for lizards. One day, he holds a reptile in his hand and smiles at a little girl, Aika, offering her the chance to touch it. Her father, since his childhood friend standing behind her, introduces the reptile as Fuchan, but quickly explains that it isn't for sale. As she reaches out, she screams and jumps back. He reassures her, explaining that despite the spiky appearance, the spikes are soft and that the reptile stays active and healthy. Her father mentions his disappointment and reveals that his daughter has been wanting a pet, which is why they've been visiting different stores. Itsuki, smiling, suggests a dog or a cat, though her father expresses that this always happens. Itsuki, enthusiastic about reptiles, shares that they are fascinating creatures and that some are even cute. He adds that reptiles, unlike dogs, don't show their emotions easily, requiring careful observation. She, however, steps back, calling the reptile spiky, and Itsuki is not offended. Her father apologizes for his daughter's reaction, but Itsuki reassures him. He hands her father a care guide for bearded dragons before they leave. After they go, he reflects on how much he needs to dedicate himself to his reptiles. Realizing that closing time is near, he starts shutting down the shop, feeds the reptiles, checks their health, and cleans the store. He reminds himself that his scaly friends deserve a clean home before heading home. At home, he finds a pile of trash, recalling how people often comment on the difficulties of living alone. Yet he feels surrounded by his reptiles, and they make him happy. The next day, he prepares for a shipment of food from Madagascar, planning to update his blog and feed his reptiles. As he arrives at the shop, strange noises inside make him uneasy. Thinking it might be a break-in or an escaped reptile, he is stunned to find a naked girl in the store who has a tail. Embarrassed, he gestures for her to dress and assumes she has nothing to wear. Upon closer inspection, he realizes she is his reptile Few, transformed into a human girl. Shocked, he sits down, struggling to process what has happened. Recalling a visit to a hidden shrine, Itsuki wonders if this could be the result of a wish he made. Confused and unsure how to handle the situation, he helps her put on clothes. As he examines her closely, he wonders how to care for her, a human version of his reptile. She, however, behaves like a young child, picking food up with her mouth instead of using her hands. He, feeling a mixture of concern and affection, begins to feed her and is surprised by her happiness after eating. He wonders about her carefree nature and whether it's okay for her to remain so innocent. While preparing to open the shop, she clings to him and he, feeling overwhelmed, warns her to stay put while he goes to the police. He hurries to finish his tasks when Eika and her father arrive. Her father shares that they are considering getting a bearded lizard as a pet for her. Itsuki is surprised but invites them inside. As they reminisce about their past, her father tells him that reptiles like his daughter need to be understood through subtle gestures. Itsuki, reflecting on this, wonders if he has truly understood her. Her father reveals that it was Eika who wanted the bearded lizard, though she admits she feels alone without her mother. Seeing this, he realizes the responsibility that comes with caring for a pet and how it parallels the care her needs. After they leave, he locks up the shop and goes to apologize to Few, feeling regret for leaving her alone. He reassures her that she is his family and promises to take care of her. But unsure she understands, he smiles when she unexpectedly says she loves him. Shocked and confused, Itsuki wonders if she is simply mimicking his words but decides to keep her with him. At home, she plays with the phone and seems to enjoy looking at creamy things. He, wondering if she eats like a human, brings her ice cream. She excitedly eats it and he, watching her, realizes that despite the craziness of the situation, everything will be okay as long as she's with him. The next day, he opens a cabinet and is shocked to see another reptile transformed into a human-like girl, and Few asks him about her. The reptile-like girl calls out to him by name, surprising him with the appearance of another lost child. Few happily hugs her, and he feels concerned, wondering how this happened despite properly closing and locking the shop. He observes her large, sleepy black eyes, soft, fluffy black tail, and familiar skin patterns, which resemble his reptile Nishiafu. Hesitant, he asks if she's the same, but she falls asleep before he can get an answer. Realizing with certainty that she is Nishiafu, the West African lizard, he remembers how he used to check on her health, ensuring her tail was sturdy and her skin healthy. He smiles as he recalls how she would fall asleep in his palm, finding her calm and adorable. Surprised by all the reptiles turning into girls, he becomes anxious, wondering what will happen if more of his creatures change into humans. An overwhelming sense of unease takes over him as he feels unable to run the store and care for the transformed children. For now, he decides to close the shop and ask them to come to his house. He calls Fu over and shows her a cat toy, asking her to come along. He then goes to Nishiafu, who is asleep again, and gently wakes her. He carefully lifts her, urging her not to fall asleep while standing. After some effort, he gets her to stand, but she extends her hand toward him, prompting him to wonder if she wants to be carried. Unsure how to manage this, he reassures her that walking with him is the right way. Frustrated, he struggles to make her move until she suddenly asks for potatoes. Distressed, he picks her up in his arms, realizing how soft her cheeks are. Holding her close, he feels a deep connection and reflects on how she used to hide from him. They reach the car. He sees and understands that she doesn't want to go home. He starts to think she may have grown fond of him. He puts both of them in the car and heads home, feeling exhausted. Upon arrival, he feels weak and lightheaded. Checking his temperature, he realizes he has a fever, which he thinks is the cause of the girl's strange, cozy behavior. He makes a simple meal for them and prepares a futon, but feels worse, lying in bed and worrying about whether they are eating properly and whether they will sleep well. His thoughts drift to what would happen if he disappeared and he falls asleep. During the night, he feels something cold on his feet and finds Nishiafu lying next to him. Surprised, he believes she must have come for warmth. He reflects on how such things, whether living together or having reptiles cheering or worrying about him, don't usually happen. She hugs him as she falls asleep. Suddenly, Fu jumps on top of him. He is surprised but comments that no matter the situation, she always moves at her own pace. He tells them they can do whatever they want, and they curl up around him as he falls asleep between them, deeply loving his reptiles. The next morning, he wakes up to find both of them beside him. He checks his temperature again, relieved to find it normal. He reflects on the previous day, feeling grateful to God. He wonders if they will ever return to their original form. If not, he promises to raise them as his girls. Both listen carefully and he tells them they have something to do. Embarrassed, he emphasizes it's important for them as girls and tells them to get ready for a bath. Suddenly, his friend arrives and shows him a picture of the reptile's old shed skin still clinging to its body. Concerned, Itsuki reassures him, explaining that bearded dragons grow slowly and require special care during shedding. He advises giving them a warm bath, showing his friend how to fill a container with water at around 35 degrees. He demonstrates checking the water temperature and explains that water should cover only the stomach, not the face. After soaking for 5 to 10 minutes, the skin will wrinkle, signaling it's time to remove the dragon. His friend thanks him, mentioning a small animal scheduled for a bath. After the conversation, he leads them to the bathroom, apologizing for the cramped space. He takes Nishifu inside first and begins undressing her, feeling embarrassed but reminding himself she is like a little sister. She freezes at the sight of the water, but he reassures her and suggests she shower first. Though she resists out of embarrassment, he finishes quickly. He shows her the bathing brush, advising her to use it herself. She follows his instructions carefully, and he lovingly calls her a clever girl. While explaining how to keep clean, he feels uncomfortable as he washes her large reptilian tail. As he looks at her, he wonders what it would be like if reptiles were human-sized. He regrets that she is growing into a girl, but shakes off the thought and finishes the bath. After her, he turns to Fu, who tries to hide. He takes her into the bathroom despite her resistance to water. As he begins undressing her, she cries and he reassures her, determined to bathe her. She resists but eventually agrees to shower. After some encouragement, she bathes with him, and he feels uneasy about his emotions. He continues to guide her, applying soap and telling her to mimic him. When the bath is over, he dries her hair and assures her he is tired but will treat her gently. She praises him and remembers his name. After both are bathed, Itsuki leads them to his shop, instructing them to stay inside when customers arrive. Upon reaching the shop, strange noises alert him to another reptilian creature now transformed into a girl. Shocked, he asks about its presence, but she quickly covers the two girls with his arms, warning him not to come closer. It is surprising that the new child can talk, as she is the first to do so. The others are unable to speak, but this one can. He, in disbelief, starts asking questions, staring at her. During this, Nishifu speaks up, saying that he never asked her if she could talk. He is shocked to see that even she can talk now. He is amazed by the new child and wonders how she knows so much. He begins asking her how much she knows. The new child asks why he wants to know and suggests he's asking because he wants to learn how to return the kids to their original forms. He is stunned. He reflects that raising them as girls was his decision, but if there is a way to return them to their original state, he would do it. He wonders how Fu and the others would feel happier in their original animal-like form. He approaches the new child and hands her clothes, asking her to put them on. As he gets closer, she bites his hand and reminds him not to come any closer. He is surprised by her defensiveness. He looks closely and realizes she is a tokay gecko, the blue tail and golden spots. He recalls that they are temperamental and make a tok sound. Although he knows how to handle the situation, he decides not to share that information. The new child then approaches him, stating she has a body equal to a human's and enjoys it. She calls him master and asks him to take care of her. He is taken aback, wondering why this new child among all the transformed ones is the temperamental Tokay. He brings the new child home. As soon as they arrive, the child asks for food. He prepares dinner and starts explaining about it, but the child refuses, saying she doesn't like simple food. He is surprised by her directness and wonders how she knows that. Annoyed, he tells her not to be selfish. To change the topic, the child asks if he really didn't want to know how to return them to their normal forms. He realizes the child is smart, but it's a complicated problem. He thinks helplessly, understanding that everything he's doing is to return them to their original state. He gives her the phone to order whatever she likes. The child looks at it but returns it, saying the light is too bright. He sarcastically mentions her wide-open pupils, but the child tells him to stop staring. He casually suggests that she should have a name. Based on her polka dot pattern, he suggests Tama, but she rejects it. He offers Kichan, but she refuses again. He tries Sora because of her blue color, but she still refuses. Finally, he asks what name she would prefer, but she angrily tells him to stop bothering her. She says she doesn't need a name and questions why he is doing this on his own. He, frustrated, thinks that she probably won't tell him how to bring them back to normal. He wonders if he can work with her. Still, he convinces himself it's not a big deal to them, though he remains anxious about it. He checks her room and sees that, after dinner, the new child is peacefully sleeping. Noticing she is sleeping with her eyes open, he realizes her day must have been long. He observes that only this new child has no eyelids. He smiles as he watches her sleep. The next day, he meets Hanayama-sana, an old man. Upon noticing the injury on his hand, the man asks about it. He explains he was bitten by a toki. The man shares that he has a wild tokay at home, laughing and saying the wilder the better. He adds that these creatures are great pets. Itsuki lowers his head, realizing that Hanayama-sana truly loves them. Still, he worries whether he'll get used to them, but reassures himself everything will be fine. He thinks his Tokay is more nervous than the others, but believes at heart she's a kind child who cares for her friends. Back home in the kitchen, he reflects on how difficult this is. He had only opened the cage and she was furious. He brings her food, thinking she might still accept it despite her anger. He covers her with a blanket, telling himself to be patient with them and promising to figure out how to return them to their original forms. The child wakes up, angrily accusing him of attacking her while she slept. Meanwhile, Fu, lost in thought, stares at herself in the mirror, reflecting on how Itsuki seemed happy seeing her. As she observes the spikes on her body, tears begin to fall. She wonders what would happen if she removed them. She sits constantly thinking about him. Whenever he passes by, she feels his presence near her. Eventually, he visits the same temple where he had prayed earlier. He pleads with God to restore his animals to their normal forms, but soon he realizes that it may be in vain. He reflects that everything began here, and he had come hoping to understand. He's uncertain if there's more to this and concludes that only one person knows the details. Meanwhile, the Toki wakes up at home feeling very hungry and immediately asks for food, specifically inquiring about dinner. She repeatedly demands food. He arrives bringing something special for her to eat. As he serves her, he realizes that his wallet is getting emptier due to the constant meals for her, and this gives him a fresh sense of frustration. Standing in front of her after serving the food, he asks if she isn't tired of being in human form. He pleads with her to quickly reveal how to restore them to their original forms. However, she refuses to answer and continues making excuses, frustrating him even further. She tells him once again that she likes her current form and is happy with it. He becomes frustrated and tells her not to fool him. He expresses that he understands how the others must be feeling and adds that she always starts to share but then stops. Hearing this, she asks him seriously if he is truly trying to understand them. He asks her what she means by that, but she dismisses the question and starts eating her food. He realizes with growing seriousness that her words mean exactly what they seem to. In the kitchen, his mind is consumed with thoughts. He wonders if she really meant what she said and questions whether he truly understands the situation. He reflects on the idea that he is now being scolded by animals and it feels like the situation has grown more difficult. Just then, Nishiyafu approaches and starts to speak to him. She approaches him and he gently asks her, sitting in front of her, what happened. She tells him sadly that he might not know, but Fu has been quite quiet for a few days. Surprised, he quickly goes to her and tells her that Nishiyafu had mentioned this to him. He notices her sitting there looking quite down and suddenly sees blood on her face mixed with the spikes. He quickly turns her face toward him and asks what's going on. He looks at her and realizes that her spikes are coming off. He's shocked to see that even in human form, the spiked parts are shedding. Seeing this, he is startled as her spikes begin to fall off and blood starts to bleed. He angrily asks her why she didn't tell him earlier, but she suddenly apologizes and starts crying, asking him not to hate her. She then asks if he's truly trying to understand them. Sitting in deep thought, he wonders what he's been doing. He realizes he's been desperately trying to fix everything, focusing on the things in front of him, but not paying attention to them. Seeing she crying like this, he quickly hugs her, admitting that he's not fit to be a proper owner and asks for her forgiveness. He then starts removing her spikes with hot water, beginning with her hand. She tells him it will hurt, but he reassures her that she will be fine. He tells her that she is the most important to him, and hearing this, she is surprised. The next day, he returns from the market and notices that she looks quite happy. He asks if something happened and shows her the komatsune he bought from the supermarket on sale. He mentions that sometimes he treats himself to something sweet. After this, he lies down on the ground, repeatedly calling her name and asking her to listen to him. Later, he starts removing her spikes, beginning with her face. As he does this, she feels considerable pain. Stating her discomfort, he quickly apologizes for the pain he caused. Despite this, she patiently stays still as he gently removes the spikes from her face. He reassures her that once the skin softens, the spikes will come off smoothly. In the meantime, she calls out to him and tells him that she truly loves him. He is surprised by her words and jokingly remarks that she is using random words she learned. However, to make her happy, he tells her that he loves her too and assures her that he will definitely find a way to return things to normal. Upon hearing this, she feels disappointed that he wants everything to go back to how it was before. He continues removing the spikes from her left side, starting with her belly and tail. He works at a reptile shop where the reptiles have transformed into girls. Though initially uncomfortable, he is gradually getting used to them. There are now 3 of them, and he is currently assisting Fu, a bearded dragon. He has already cleaned her, leaving only her tail and belly to be treated. He asks her to take off her clothes. She hesitates and he notices her fear. He asks what's wrong and reassures her, acknowledging that she felt pain when he removed her face covering. He promises not to hurt her, explaining that her wounds are not as deep here and that he will take care of her. The water reaches a comfortable temperature, and he tells her it's just right. She then removes her clothes and stands there, visibly frightened. He is surprised but stays calm. He tells her to soak in the water first. She hesitates but eventually sits quietly in the bathtub. Looking at her, he reflects on her change since he first met her, wondering if she has always been this way. He recalls that she used to be more carefree, but he's unsure if he's just imagining things. He begins to remove her scales, noting that they are coming off easily. He tells her that her tail is the last part left and asks her to look forward and sit down in a reverse position. He considers that bearded dragons don't self-amputate, but recalls that incomplete shedding can cause dead tissue in their fingers. He reassures her that he will be gentle to avoid any discomfort. As he cleans her tail, she stands up in discomfort and Itsuki apologizes immediately. She reassures him that everything is fine. He continues, asking if it feels better now. However, she feels uneasy with each touch, wondering why it's affecting her so much. She feels troubled by the sensation. While continuing, he remarks that reaching the base of her tail is difficult. She suddenly stands, covering her face with her hands in embarrassment, apologizing. Her tail accidentally touches his face, causing him to fall. She apologizes again, and he comments that her tail's strength has doubled. After finishing, her tail looks much healthier, and he expresses hope that it will make her feel better. He also mentions that she must be tired since this is an unfamiliar experience for her. He smiles and pats her head, telling her she did a great job and should rest well today. She also pats her head, and he praises her for persevering through the pain. She thanks him with a smile, and he stands quietly, thinking of her as his child. He lovingly calls her cute. Meanwhile, Nishifu and Toki are sitting together, watching them. She expresses confusion to see how happy Fu is with humans, as she views them as extremely selfish. She believes that once they have no use for someone, they abandon them. Nishifu asks if this is true, and he also inquires. Toki, annoyed, stands up and grabs her clothes. He quickly pulls her away, telling her to stop. She admits she had been wondering if Fu prefers not wearing underwear like the others. He, embarrassed, denies this and explains that he knew he needed to buy some clothes but didn't know where to start, so he kept putting it off. The new girl understands and, pulling her towards her, suggests they all go shopping. He feels uneasy, overwhelmed by the situation, while Toki wonders if he truly understands a girl's heart. The new girl insists on joining them, but he is concerned, explaining that walking outside with such a large tail would cause a commotion, preventing them from shopping. She understands and uses a technique to shrink her tail slightly, asking for his approval. Surprised, he realizes she can make her tail appear and disappear at will. He then asks Fu if she shares this ability, and Toki offers to teach her. He stands in thought, feeling that everything should be fine in appearance, but admits he doesn't know much about underwear. Noticing Nishifu standing alone, he approaches and asks if she wants to join them, but she refuses, which surprises him. He reminds himself that she tends to stay indoors. A little disappointed, he moves on, and the 3 head to the shopping mall. Once there, he asks where they want to go first, confirming they are there to buy underwear. At the store, Toki excitedly shows her different clothes, commenting that casual outfits look good on her but that frills and cute designs suit her as well. He watches, realizing they've ended up looking at clothes. Toki hands her 2 outfits and encourages her to try them on. He smiles, thinking that if they enjoy this experience, it's a good thing. The new girl tries on her chosen outfit and likes it, but he suggests brighter, more colorful clothing. Fu changes into the outfit he prefers and he likes it. However, Toki criticizes it, calling it dull and lifeless, mocking it for being flashy and standing out too much. He, frustrated, questions what's wrong with the outfit, reminding her that he spent the most time with Fu. Toki, irritated, argues that spending time together has nothing to do with clothing choices. A female clerk approaches, offering to help them check sizes and fit. She asks him if he prefers the previous or current outfit, reassuring him that there's no need to hesitate. They continue arguing, but Fu interrupts, deciding to take all the clothes and thank them. The total cost becomes quite high as their shopping continues. Finally, they arrive at the undergarments shop. He tells them he'll leave the bags in the car and wait outside, asking them to call him when it's time to pay. Both agree and head inside. She tries on a bra but finds it too tight. She asks her for a larger size. Disappointed, she tells her not to be rude to him. Surprised, Taki seriously asks if she really likes him, but Fu avoids the question, explaining that there are different kinds of liking. Tak smirks, teasing her about thinking of him as family. Fu begins reflecting on her feelings for him, recalling warm, happy moments with him, and wonders what kind of feelings she truly has for him. Meanwhile, Taki grows angry, warning her not to misunderstand. She tells her that when she is no longer needed, she'll be abandoned. Fu rejects this idea, insisting that Itsuki would never do that. The shopkeeper approaches and asks about their size. Outside, he hears this and suspects the shopkeeper is talking about them. Realizing this, he decides to go inside. He enters under the pretext of getting his wallet, and seeing him, Fu is relieved and tells him she had been worried due to his lateness. He senses that something is wrong, and though Toki refuses to explain, he remains suspicious, feeling the heavy atmosphere around them. They go to the counter to pay, where the manager informs them of the total of 12 items and hands them the bill. He is shocked by the amount and reflects on how expensive girls' underwear is compared to his own, which costs around 1,000 yen. He opens his wallet but finds he doesn't have enough money. He asks if he can pay with a card, and the manager agrees. Concerned about the high expenses, he begins to think he needs to start saving money. They leave the store and she expresses a desire to eat, suggesting they go to the food court. Toki agrees, and he's still worried about the expenses, questions if it's wise to have so little money. Toki teases him, whispering that he seems tired of taking care of both of them. Annoyed, Itsuki looks at her in surprise. As they arrive at the food court, Toki, loud as ever, starts ordering a large amount of food, and Fu tries to calm her down. He scolds Toki for her behavior, but she explains that he doesn't understand the difficulty she's going through. He asks if she is testing him or if something else is happening, stating that her actions don't make sense. He tells her that he doesn't care about her opinion of him, and it doesn't matter what she thinks. He assures her that no matter the circumstances, he will never abandon her. Surprised by his words, she is left stunned, her mouth slightly agape. Seeing her reaction, he gently places his hand on her head, telling her that feeling troubled is natural, especially for her, and that love is about understanding and care. She recalls her painful past when a couple bought her for her beauty, keeping her in their home. After being placed at a friend's house, her friend felt she couldn't properly care for her, and the exotic animal shop recently opened decided to keep her there alone. The couple hoped she would find someone better who could take her in and make her happy. This experience led her to develop a hatred for humans. Suddenly, she stands up in anger, declaring that people aren't like that and revealing her vulnerability. The others are surprised, making strange comments about her tale. She stands silently, feeling embarrassed and unsure of how to handle the situation. He steps in, explaining that she worked hard on it for today's event. People begin to praise her, and children around start recognizing it as a cosplay. Later, they head home, and he assures her that everything will be fine and that they've managed to avoid trouble. Tired and frustrated, Fu says she doesn't want to go outside for a while. She mentions it would have been better if someone had taken her away. However, he interrupts, telling her not to say such things. He reminds her that she wasn't supposed to go out for supplies and asks who would do something like that. He assures her that it's cold outside, but she shouldn't worry because he's with her. At that moment, Toki feels sympathy for him and apologizes for biting his hand earlier. He is surprised and asks what she just said. She tells him it's troubling and asks him not to look at her that way. Seeing the exchange, Fu smiles with relief, glad to see them starting to communicate. The scene shifts to his shop where he is cleaning while customers observe the animals. They approach a small creature named Geku, discussing its ability to climb walls and perform similar activities. However, seeing it in its current position, they feel it's unlikely to move. He's surprised by the presence of high school girls, realizes that he no longer feels nervous around girls. The customers call him over, asking what the creature eats. He explains that the gecko eats insects, mentioning that he is currently feeding it crickets. The customers express concern about raising insects, and he reassures them by suggesting frozen food, which can be thawed and fed easily. He further explains that each gecko has different habits and some even learn to mark bathroom spots with their scent. The customers are impressed by the gecko's intelligence, and he assures them that with patience, the creature will respond to their care. Meanwhile, at his home, the three children are watching a dog video on a tablet. Toki explains to Few about a Samoyed breed, and they happily chat until her stomach growls. Toki heads to prepare food, but is distracted by a video on love. Few watches the video, which asks if she has felt pain in her heart or warmth for someone, explaining that these feelings indicate love. She's fascinated, but as the video gets deeper, Toki returns with food. Few quickly closes the tablet, embarrassed. Toki, surprised, comments that she had called her to eat earlier, and Few replies she will eat now. Soon after, Suki arrives home, greeted by her with a smile. He asks about the delicious smell, and she tells him that Toki made the food. He is surprised and pleased. Toki watches with confusion. After that, they sit at the table, chatting, and compliments Fu for her care. She thanks him and they laugh. She happily tells him that she studied and saw a dog, and he comments on her talking more recently. Toki, troubled, watches them. Eventually, she takes him aside and tells him that she will reveal how they can return to their normal forms. This shocks him, who is surprised by her decision to share this. They head to the location she mentioned. Few, feeling uneasy, asks where they are going. He asks why Toki suddenly decided to share the information, and she brushes it off, saying it's better to return before things worsen. Then they arrive at the location, and he is confused as he doesn't find anything similar to his previous visit. She starts looking for someone near the trees and bushes. He asks her, surprised, what she is doing, and she explains that the person she's looking for is usually here. She calls out, requesting to talk. A voice calls from behind the trees, and a girl steps out, revealing herself as a shrine maiden with a tail. He is stunned to recognize her as the human from before. The girl smiles and asks about his life with the reptile girls, mentioning she granted his wish for a happy life with reptiles. He, shocked, asks if that was his wish, as he intended for his normal life to continue. The girl responds that boys these days like that sort of thing. Annoyed, he explains that she ignored him the last time he came alone. The girl admits she didn't realize he had been there before. As they talk, Toki interrupts, stating they all want to return to their normal forms. Few, surprised, muses she doesn't want to go back. After a brief hesitation, the girl agrees to grant their wish. Itsuki feels relieved, thinking they can finally return to their normal lives. On the way back, Few feels quite upset, thinking that they will return to their normal lives because she doesn't want to go back.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.